If you can't hear the music, dial up that potentiometer. 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 Also sometimes referred to as a voltage divider. A potentiometer is a device that mainly lies in the field of electrical engineering, but of course, because electrical engineering branches off into all the other engineering disciplines, potentiometers are something that engineers of almost all disciplines probably have run into at some time or another, at least in the basic circuits class or physics class that you have to take in the beginning of college. A potentiometer is basically a variable resistor. And to know what I mean by that, you got to know what resistance is. Recall that electricity, in common English language, is really referring to the flow of electrons, the current, so to speak. Current is the flow of electrons. And what a resistance is something that resists that flow of electrons. Some people imagine electricity or current as this flow of water. You know, as electrons are shooting through our wires, it's like water shooting through pipes. And so if electricity is like water, then resistance is like anything that resists the flow of that water. So imagine a pipe with water flowing. Well, one way to resist that flow and reduce the flow is to have a section of that pipe that is all of a sudden really, really, really narrow. Like instead of a big wide pipe, it suddenly goes down to the diameter of a straw, a drinking straw or something. That would severely resist the flow of the water. That's kind of like what resistance is in electronics. Resistances resist that flow of electrons in current. Well, a potentiometer, since it's a variable resistor, it actually can change how much resistance it's providing. Going back to that pipe and water analogy, imagine if the water's flowing through our pipes, but then it reaches this section of pipe where you can change the diameter of this pipe at will. Like it might start out at the diameter of a tiny, narrow drinking straw, but then whenever you want, you can make that drinking straw-sized pipe expand to a huge 4-foot diameter pipe, and your water can just flow through freely. That section of pipe provides a variable resistance to the flow of the water. Well, our potentiometers, or our variable resistors, they provide a variable resistance to the flow of electrons whenever you want. Whenever the human comes by and adjusts the potentiometer, they can change the resistance to the flow of electrons. You might imagine, by the way, that this resistor is just like a solid block of material and it's, resisting the electrons flowing through. And there's a little section of it that you can physically adjust with your fingers or with a screwdriver or something. And as you adjust it, it makes the circuit touch the resistor at a different point. It moves the contact point of the circuit to that resistor. Again, it's providing a variable resistance, and just by adjusting it with, your hands, you can change it. It's like a super cool power. I think that when I first used a potentiometer, it was kind of neat because you make electricity more tangible, more physical, because it's hard to imagine the flow of electrons. It's hard to imagine changing resistances. But if you can touch it and see how that point of contact in your circuit is changing, and as a result, it changes how bright our light bulb is, it makes electricity that much more real. So a potentiometer is a neat little tool. It's used in all sorts of devices to calibrate electrical devices or adjust certain voltages, that kind of thing. You could think of the old school televisions with a volume knob. Well, that's just a giant potentiometer that if you crank it up, it changes the circuit connection in there a little bit, and it changes the resistance to the flow of electrons in there, and then you can adjust your volume. Well, that's where you find your potentiometers, and that is our engineering word of the day. This is your host, Pius, saying thanks once again for listening to the Engineering Word of the Day podcast. You are awesome. To listen to more podcasts about engineering education, please check out the K-12 Engineering Education podcast, and you can find it at k12engineering.net. Listen and subscribe today.